The sea is never silent. Even in its deepest places, it carries whispers older than time. Waves crash above, but beneath them lies a world unseen, glowing, shifting, alive with memory. Legends drift through the currents like forgotten songs, waiting for those who will listen. Among these stories, one rises brighter, like light through water. It is the tale of a crown, not a crown of iron or gold, but one born of flame, flame that shines beneath the ocean's skin. They say it was forged in the first meeting of sun and sea, a bond between sky and water. It burned not to destroy, but to guide, holding balance in its glow. Yet the crown was lost, swallowed by the deep, hidden where no mortal hand could reach. Still the sea remembers. Its whispers carry the name of the one who seeks it. Poseidon, lord of tides, keeper of storms, restless in his palace of coral and stone. He hears the murmur of the currents, a call carried through shells and waves. And so begins the story of Poseidon and the Sunken Crown Flame, a journey into mystery. The sea shifted as dawn touched the horizon, painting gold over restless waves. Beneath that light, the ocean breathed slowly, deep and endless. Poseidon sat within his coral hall, trident resting beside him. Though he was lord of the seas, his gaze held restlessness. The palace gleamed with pearls and shells, yet silence pressed heavy. Currents carried whispers, soft as sighs, curling through watery arches. They spoke not of storms or ships, but of something older, a tale buried in darkness, drifting like an echo of memory. Poseidon leaned forward, listening, though no voice called his name. The sound was faint, like song carried through distant caverns. It spoke of light, of fire, of a crown lost in time. The god of tides frowned, for such a story was rare. Fire in the sea was impossible, yet the ocean remembered. He closed his eyes, letting currents circle, carrying secrets closer. In the stillness, he heard it more clearly, a pulse beneath waves, a rhythm that was not storm, not tide, but something sacred. It drew him, a mystery buried where even gods seldom tread. Poseidon rose from his throne, coral shifting beneath his steps. Sea creatures stirred, sensing their master's unease and rising intent. Dolphins darted between pillars, their sleek forms glimmering like silver. They chirped and called, weaving sound through the water like questions. Poseidon lifted a hand, and the waters calmed in reply. "I hear it too," he murmured, voice steady yet thoughtful. The crown of flame, whispered of in myth, lost to shadow. He remembered fragments, told long ago in halls of Olympus. Zeus had once mocked the tale, calling it sailor's fancy. Yet Hera had frowned, speaking of balance between sea and sky. Balance that could be broken if such a flame was forgotten. Poseidon had dismissed it once, too consumed by waves and storms. But the sea never forgot, and now its voice grew, stronger. He walked past mosaics of whales and chariots carved in shell. Each step echoed like thunder, though no storm was near. Outside the palace walls, the sea darkened into endless blue. Schools of fish shimmered, scattering as shadows stretched long. Poseidon raised his trident, feeling its weight, both tool and bond. The whispers surged, curling around him like unseen hands. "Seek," they seemed to say. "Remember. Restore what was lost." The god of oceans drew a deep breath, steadying his will. If the flame still burned, even hidden, it must be found. Not for glory, not for rule, but for balance itself. He thought of the skies above, of clouds carried by wind, of rain drawn from his seas, feeding earth and mortal life. What if this crown linked them all, sea, sky, and sun? What if losing it had unbalanced all that lived below? Poseidon knew then this was no simple myth, but truth. He turned back toward the hall, calling for his faithful. Turtles, wise with age, swam near, shells worn by centuries. Seahorses drifted, their eyes bright with quiet knowing. Even the whales sang, their voices low, vibrating like drums. Together they circled him, guardians of the deep, allies eternal. He spoke to them not as lord, but as fellow keepers. Something stirs in the abyss. The flame calls us back. The creatures listened, their silence filled with trust and patience. Poseidon lowered his trident, letting its tip rest on stone. The sound rang out, sharp, echoing through the ocean halls. With that note, the sea seemed to awaken, currents shifting. An ancient path opened in the darkness, unseen yet certain. Poseidon knew his journey had begun, guided by the ocean's call. The whispers faded into rhythm, steady as a heartbeat. And so the god of seas prepared to seek the crown flame. The sea keeps its secrets, but legends find ways to survive. Long before mortals built ships, the ocean carried a memory. It was the story of a crown born not of metal, but light. They called it the crown flame, a gift when sky first kissed the sea. The sun touched the waves, and from that union, a fire awoke. It was not fire that burned, but light that glowed like dawn. Its purpose was balance, to unite what seemed forever apart. Sky ruled above, sea ruled below, but the crown joined them. For a time, harmony stretched across tide, cloud, and shore. Fishermen spoke of calm waters, sailors of guiding light. Even storms bent gently, shaped by unseen hands of balance. But mortals are seldom content with what they are given. Kings heard whispers of the crown and dreamed of dominion. They longed not for harmony, but for power unchallenged. To seize the flame meant to command both sea and sky. And so ships were built, sails spread, searching the endless blue. They carried greed heavier than anchors, heavier than stone. Poseidon watched from his halls, troubled by their hunger. He warned them with storms, with restless tides, and shifting currents. Still they came, seeking light that was never theirs to claim. At last, one fateful night, the crown was brought to shore. Legends say the sea groaned, as though wounded in its heart. The flame dimmed, its glow fading beneath mortal grasp. Balance faltered, winds raged, waves rose, skies darkened. Poseidon rose in fury, yet even he could not undo fate. The crown slipped from mortal hands, tumbling into the abyss. It fell where light could not follow, swallowed by trenches deep. There it rested, hidden from gods and men alike. The sea covered its loss with silence, but silence holds memory. Whales sang of it in mourning songs carried through ages. Corals grew around the memory, glowing faintly with its echo. Children of the sea learned to guard the secret with loyalty. And yet, the tale endured, woven into myth and dream. Some said it was gone, nothing but salt-born fantasy. Others whispered it still lived, waiting for one who would listen. The gods themselves disagreed, divided by pride and doubt. Athena spoke of wisdom hidden in its light, calm and steady. Ares dismissed it as weakness, a flame that shackled strength. Zeus laughed, declaring no crown could rival his thunder. But Hera frowned, warning of balance broken long ago. Poseidon remembered her words, though he let them pass. For centuries, he ruled without seeking what was lost. But the sea is patient, carrying truth through uncounted tides. Its whispers rise when the time has come to be heard. And now, in Poseidon's halls, the current sang again, not of greed, not of warning, but of awakening. The flame was stirring, restless in its slumber beneath waves. Its glow called not to mortals, but to the god of tides. Poseidon paced, trident in hand, remembering the tale. Crown was not meant for power, but for balance. If he sought it, it would not be to claim or rule. It would be to restore harmony where silence had lingered. He thought of mortals above, chasing storms they could not tame. He thought of skies darkened by winds without anchor. And he thought of seas that wept for their forgotten flame. In that moment, the god knew the legend was truth. Not myth, not fancy, but memory older than stone. The crown was real, and the sea longed for its return. Poseidon lifted his gaze toward the deep trenches below. Somewhere in the shadows, the crown still waited. The journey would not be simple nor free of trial, but the ocean had chosen him, its master and servant both. The tale of the forgotten crown was now his to reclaim. And so he stepped forward, into mystery, into memory. The legend was no longer whisper. It was a call to begin. The sea shifted with quiet purpose, carrying secrets through hidden channels. Poseidon stood at the edge of his coral hall, gaze fixed on the horizon. The whispers of the crown lingered in his mind, steady as a heartbeat. But to seek it, he could not go alone, for the ocean spoke through many. He summoned the gathering of the tides, calling to his oldest companions. The dolphins arrived first, swift and bright, weaving circles of silver. They clicked and chirped, voices rising like laughter carried by waves. Their leader, a dolphin scarred by time, bowed before the god. "We hear the flame's song," it said, its voice clear and playful. "Show us where to swim, Lord, and we will follow." Poseidon nodded, trident glowing faintly in the dimming light. Next came the sea turtles, ancient and slow, their shells etched with ages. They moved like drifting boulders, steady and unshaken by current. One lifted its head, eyes clouded but wise, and spoke. "The deep remembers," the turtle rumbled, voice like rolling stone. "If the crown calls, the abyss itself will guide your path." Seahorses followed, delicate yet proud, their tails curling like script. They danced in patterns, creating shapes that shimmered with meaning. "We carry the whispers," they said, voices soft as foam. The reefs glow brighter, pointing toward the trench of shadow. Finally, a song drifted from the far dark, long and low. A whale approached, immense and ancient, its skin scarred by time. Its voice trembled the water, deep notes that stirred the coral. "Ocean's master," it sang, "your journey is written in tide. The flame is not found by strength, but by patience and heart." Poseidon listened, letting their voices weave into a single song. Each creature carried a piece of truth, threads of a larger story. The dolphins brought joy, reminding him to move swiftly but playfully. The turtles brought patience, steadying his restless and stormy nature. The seahorses offered guidance, delicate but sure, like signs in starlight. The whale gave wisdom, a reminder that depth reveals more than surface. Together, they formed a council, guardians of sea's eternal memory. Poseidon lowered his trident and let it touch the ocean floor. Light rippled outward, like dawn spreading beneath waves. "I ask not for servants," he said, voice calm but firm. "I ask for companions to walk this path of memory." The creatures bowed, not in duty, but in trust and kinship, for they too felt the call of the Sunken Crown Flame. Currents swirled, carrying their promise into the dark below. The god of seas raised his eye, knowing the way was set. This was no voyage of conquest, but of restoration. And so the gathering of the tides began its journey. They swam past fields of coral, glowing like lanterns in night. through kelp forests that swayed like green cathedrals in current. Schools of fish scattered, their scales flashing like stars in motion. The sea itself seemed to shift, opening paths long forgotten. Poseidon swam among his companions. No throne, no crown. Only a god, listening to the voices of his realm. The dolphin leapt, signaling a change in current ahead. The turtles pressed forward, unhurried, but unstoppable. The seahorses glowed faintly, guiding with signs of hidden reefs. The whale's song deepened, echoing like a heartbeat in stone. Together they moved as one, carrying the ocean's memory. And as the currents pulled them deeper, the whispers grew louder. The sea was leading them to the abyss, to the place of shadows, and Poseidon knew this was the first true step of his quest. The sea darkened as Poseidon and his companions swam beyond the coral fields. Light from the surface thinned, scattering in silver threads across shifting water. The dolphins swam ahead, their sleek forms cutting quick paths through shadow. The turtles followed, steady and patient, carrying calm into the deep. Seahorses drifted close, glowing faintly like lanterns in dim water. The whale moved last, its song guiding them through hidden channels. Together, they entered the great descent, leaving the known world behind. The ocean floor dropped sharply, falling into an endless trench of blue. Here the currents twisted, colder, heavier, like hands tugging them downward. Yet the path was clear, shaped by whispers that urged them on. The corals gave way to stone cliffs, sharp and towering like mountains. Strange fish glimmered in the dark, their eyes glowing like scattered stars. Some drifted close, curious, then vanished back into the gloom. Poseidon felt the water thrum with power, as if alive with memory. Each pulse carried the echo of the crown, steady and unbroken. He gripped his trident, letting its glow reveal the shifting abyss. The dolphins leapt through pockets of light, chasing sparks of silver. The turtles pressed forward, shells scraping gently against the cliff walls. The seahorses clustered, forming circles, their glow marking the safe way. The whale's deep notes spread outward, calming restless currents around them. But the deeper they went, the stranger the ocean became. Jellyfish drifted, enormous and glowing, their tendrils stretching like veils. Their light shimmered blue and violet, painting the trench with soft hues. Poseidon watched them with wonder, seeing beauty where others might fear. The whispers grew louder, weaving with the rhythm of the whale's song. They no longer spoke in riddles, but in clear, steady pulses. Deeper, they said, closer. The flame waits in silence. The god of seas felt a stirring within his heart. He thought of balance, of harmony lost, and of what must return. For the first time, he wondered not about the crown's power, but about the responsibility it carried and the cost of neglect. The trench narrowed, walls closing in with stone and shadow. Currents rushed upward, testing their strength, urging them to turn back. The dolphins darted bravely, fighting the streams with swift strokes. The turtles endured, pressing forward without haste, refusing retreat. The seahorses aligned in a glowing chain, lighting the narrow path. The whale's song deepened, countering the pull with steady vibration. Together, they broke through the current and entered a calm pocket. Here the water was still, yet heavy with unseen weight. Poseidon raised his trident, and light spilled into the darkness. It revealed a cavern mouth carved into the cliff face. The rocks shimmered faintly, etched with patterns like flowing script. Symbols of waves, of suns, of flames wrapped in circles. The god approached, tracing the lines with careful hands. He knew them, for they were older than Olympus itself. Marks of balance, reminders of what was lost in greed. The cavern beckoned, silent, waiting, filled with breathless anticipation. Poseidon turned to his companions, his voice low but clear. Beyond this gate lies the path to memory and flame. The dolphins chirped, their voices high with eager courage. The turtles bowed, patient as stone, ready to endure. The seahorses circled, glowing brighter as though in agreement. The whale rumbled deep, a note of solemn promise. Poseidon entered the cavern first, trident casting a steady glow. The others followed, their forms small against the vast stone. Inside, the sea shifted again, softer, filled with shimmering life. Corals glowed faintly along the walls, lighting their silent passage. The trench outside seemed distant, as if they had crossed a veil. Here, the whispers grew steady, warm, guiding every movement. The flame was near, though still hidden, resting in sacred stillness. Poseidon breathed deeply, feeling both the weight and promise of his quest. The journey into the deep had begun, and the abyss awaited. The cavern stretched endlessly, its walls shimmering with ancient light. Each surface gleamed as though touched by forgotten suns, alive with memory. The water was still, hushed, like a temple where no voice dared echo. Poseidon swam slowly, trident raised, its glow bending shadows into shapes. The dolphins darted ahead, their clicks echoing like bells in silence. The turtles drifted, their shells brushing faintly against carved stone ridges. Seahorses glided like sparks of firelight, leaving trails across the dark. The whale followed, deep notes rumbling like steady heartbeats of the ocean. Cymbals danced along the walls, etched in spirals of flame and wave. They pulsed with faint light, guiding the god deeper into the heart. Poseidon touched one mark, and warmth spread through the water. The whisper grew clear, a voice without words, speaking in feeling. It spoke of balance, of cycles, of the eternal bond of sea and sky. Poseidon listened, humbled, for the sea itself was guiding him. He remembered moments when storms raged without cause, waves broke without mercy. Perhaps these were echoes of imbalance, of a flame long hidden. The dolphins circled him, their voices rising in harmonious notes. They too seemed to sense the shift, a new current of meaning. The turtles pressed on, patient, steady, marking the passage of time. The seahorses glowed brighter, as though absorbing the whisper's strength. The whale sang once, long and low, sealing the cavern in calm. At last, the tunnel opened into a chamber vast and luminous. Here the ceiling arched high, vanishing into shadows dotted with lights. They were not stars, but glowing crystals embedded in living stone. The floor was smooth, rippled as though carved by flowing tides. In the center rose a pedestal of coral, braided in spirals. Upon it lay nothing, only emptiness where once a crown rested. Poseidon halted, his chest heavy, for the whispers grew sorrowful. The flame was taken, they murmured, hidden where the sea cannot reach. The god frowned, his eyes narrowing as he raised his trident. The glow struck the pedestal, and the coral shimmered with memory. Images bloomed in the water, visions alive, stories unfolding before them. He saw the flame crown, shining bright in the hands of gods. It burned with balance, gifting harmony to sea, sky, and land. But he saw envy too, shadows gathering like storms above Olympus. A hand, unseen, stole the crown, casting it into the abyss. Not into ocean depths, but further, beyond the sea's embrace. The vision faded, leaving silence heavy as stone. The dolphins hovered close, uneasy, their sleek bodies trembling faintly. The turtles stilled, their wise eyes fixed on the empty pedestal. The seahorses formed a tight circle, their glow dim with worry. The whale's voice rumbled, low, as though mourning with the sea. Poseidon spoke, his voice steady, though his heart carried doubt. The flame lies deeper still, beyond reach, yet not beyond calling. The whispers surged, wrapping around him like a tide of certainty. Seek where fire meets shadow, where silence holds its breath. Poseidon nodded, for the sea had shown him a fragment of truth. He turned to his companions, his eyes lit with resolve. The path is not ended. The crown waits in hidden flame. The dolphins cried out, their notes sharp, yet carrying hope. The turtles shifted forward, patient, accepting the endless journey. The seahorses flared with light, ready to guide once again. The whale released a note deep enough to shake the cavern walls. Together, they left the chamber, carrying whispers like lanterns of promise. The cavern sealed behind them, shadows closing with soft finality. Yet Poseidon knew the journey had only begun to unfold. The crown was not lost. It was waiting to be found anew. And so they swam, deeper still, chasing silence into the unknown. The sea grew darker still, pressing heavy as stone upon their path. Poseidon led the way, his trident casting thin threads of silver light. The dolphins moved close, their songs weaving courage into the silence. The turtles swam steady, undisturbed by the weight of shadow around them. The seahorses glowed softly, forming a fragile chain of hope and gloom. The whale sang low, his voice a deep anchor against the void. They entered a trench where light could not survive. Only memory remained. The walls narrowed, jagged cliffs crowding like teeth from the abyss. Yet between the stones, faint lines shimmered, marks older than time. Poseidon traced them as he passed, feeling warmth pulse under his hand. The whispers grew louder, like a heartbeat beneath the sea itself. Beyond the veil, they said, beyond shadow, the flame breathed still. Poseidon's brow furrowed, for he felt both promise and warning entwined. The dolphins flickered past, chasing shapes that dissolved into mist. The turtles pressed on, as though they knew the trench was endless. The seahorses trembled, their glow flickering under the weight of silence. The whale's song filled the void, steady, guiding them through the dark. Suddenly the current shifted, rushing upward with unnatural force. It tore sand from the trench floor, clouding the water in storms. The dolphins scattered, calling sharp notes that cut through the chaos. The turtles steadied themselves, bracing against the walls of stone. The seahorses spun wildly, their light dimming in the swirl of sand. The whale released a great note, calming the current with deep resonance. At the center of the turbulence, Poseidon saw a rift open. Not a cave, not a passage, but a tear glowing with fire. It burned in silence, flame without smoke, light without heat. The crown's echo rang clear from within, a call undeniable. Poseidon lifted his trident, the glow meeting the fire with harmony. The rift pulsed once, like a heart waking from centuries of rest. The whispers swelled, no longer soft, but a chorus of command. Enter, they said. The path of flame is the path of truth. The dolphins hovered near Poseidon, their eyes wide with trust. The turtles waited still, ready to endure what lay ahead. The seahorses brightened again, forming a radiant arc before the rift. The whale gave one final song, deep enough to shake the trench. Poseidon breathed deeply, his gaze fixed on the burning veil. He knew this was no ordinary threshold, but a crossing of worlds. Beyond it lay fire, silence, and the test of balance itself. Yet he did not falter, for the sea carried him onward. He turned to his companions, speaking with quiet certainty. We go together. The flame is not mine alone, but ours to restore. The dolphins whistled, their notes rising with fierce resolve. The turtles inclined their heads, steady as mountains in the deep. The seahorses flared bright, guiding the way into the heart of flame. The whale rumbled low, a final note of promise and strength. Poseidon pressed forward, the trident leading him through the fiery veil. The dolphins followed, leaping with courage into the unknown blaze. The turtles entered without fear, their calm a shield of endurance. The seahorses streamed like sparks, carrying light into the rift. The whale passed last, his vast form vanishing into burning silence. As the veil closed behind them, the trench fell still once more. No trace of flame remained, only the echo of their passage. And in the deep, the sea whispered, softer now, yet certain. The journey continues, for the crown flame waits in hidden silence. The sea grew darker still, pressing heavy as stone upon their path. Poseidon led the way, his trident casting thin threads of silver light. The dolphins moved close, their songs weaving courage into the silence. The turtles swam steady, undisturbed by the weight of shadow around them. The seahorses glowed softly, forming a fragile chain of hope and gloom. The whale sang low, his voice a deep anchor against the void. They entered a trench where light could not survive. Only memory remained. The walls narrowed, jagged cliffs crowding like teeth from the abyss. Yet between the stones, faint lines shimmered, marks older than time. Poseidon traced them as he passed, feeling warmth pulse under his hand. The whispers grew louder, like a heartbeat beneath the sea itself. Beyond the veil, they said, beyond shadow, the flame breathed still. Poseidon's brow furrowed, for he felt both promise and warning entwined. The dolphins flickered past, chasing shapes that dissolved into mist. The turtles pressed on, as though they knew the trench was endless. The seahorses trembled, their glow flickering under the weight of silence. The whale's song filled the void, steady, guiding them through the dark. Suddenly the current shifted, rushing upward with unnatural force. It tore sand from the trench floor, clouding the water in storms. The dolphins scattered, calling sharp notes that cut through the chaos. The turtles steadied themselves, bracing against the walls of stone. The seahorses spun wildly, their light dimming in the swirl of sand. The whale released a great note, calming the current with deep resonance. At the center of the turbulence, Poseidon saw a rift open. Not a cave, not a passage, but a tear glowing with fire. It burned in silence, flame without smoke, light without heat. The crown's echo rang clear from within, a call undeniable. Poseidon lifted his trident, the glow meeting the fire with harmony. The rift pulsed once, like a heart waking from centuries of rest. The whispers swelled, no longer soft, but a chorus of command. Enter, they said. The path of flame is the path of truth. The dolphins hovered near Poseidon, their eyes wide with trust. The turtles waited still, ready to endure what lay ahead. The seahorses brightened again, forming a radiant arc before the rift. The whale gave one final song, deep enough to shake the trench. Poseidon breathed deeply, his gaze fixed on the burning veil. He knew this was no ordinary threshold, but a crossing of worlds. Beyond it lay fire, silence, and the test of balance itself. Yet he did not falter, for the sea carried him onward. He turned to his companions, speaking with quiet certainty. We go together. The flame is not mine alone, but ours to restore. The dolphins whistled, their notes rising with fierce resolve. The turtles inclined their heads, steady as mountains in the deep. The seahorses flared bright, guiding the way into the heart of flame. The whale rumbled low, a final note of promise and strength. Poseidon pressed forward, the trident leading him through the fiery veil. The dolphins followed, leaping with courage into the unknown blaze. The turtles entered without fear, their calm a shield of endurance. The seahorses streamed like sparks, carrying light into the rift. The whale passed last, his vast form vanishing into burning silence. As the veil closed behind them, the trench fell still once more. No trace of flame remained, only the echo of their passage. And in the deep, the sea whispered, softer now, yet certain. The journey continues, for the crown flame waits in hidden silence. The chamber of flame trembled as Poseidon stood before the hovering ember. It glowed brighter with each breath, testing the strength of his spirit. The dolphins circled him, their voices weaving songs of hope and courage. The turtles remained still, their eyes calm, holding the patience of stone. The seahorses shimmered, forming patterns like ancient runes across the fire-lit water. The whale's song echoed deep, steadying Poseidon's heart against fear. The ember pulsed once, sending ripples of fire across the chamber walls. With each ripple, visions burst forth, more vivid than before. Poseidon saw oceans raging without balance, storms tearing coasts apart. He saw rivers drying, skies burning, earth cracking under silence. The flame revealed what might come if balance was left untended. The dolphins cried out, voices sharp, cutting through the haunting visions. The turtles pressed closer, grounding the god with their unshaken calm. The seahorses lit brighter, chasing away the shadows that lingered. The whale released a note deep enough to soothe the chamber. Poseidon steadied his breath, refusing to bend to fear or pride. The whispers surged again, stronger now, no longer soft or distant. Balance demands sacrifice. Will you yield for harmony to return? The god of seas lowered his trident, light flickering in his eyes. I am not here to claim, but to serve what must be. The ember flared, spinning faster, scattering sparks through the chamber. Each spark touched the companions, weaving light into their forms. The dolphins glowed with silver fire, their songs turning to hymns. The turtles' shells lit with molten lines, marking them as guardians. The seahorses blazed like tiny stars, carrying fragments of the flame. The whale's bodies shimmered, vast and radiant, a vessel of resonance. Together, they became more than companions. They were keepers of the flame. The ember dimmed, reshaping itself into a ring of fire. It spun around Poseidon, surrounding him in a circle of trial. The whispers grew sharp, demanding truth, demanding surrender of self. Cast away what binds you, pride, doubt, desire for dominion. The flames surged higher, pressing closer, testing the god's resolve. Poseidon felt their heat, though the water itself did not boil. He remembered storms he had unleashed in anger, waves without mercy. He saw his pride, his defiance against gods and mortals alike. And he let it fall, piece by piece, into the fire. The dolphins sang louder, carrying his surrender into light. The turtles hummed low, as if sealing his vow in stone. The seahorses spiraled, scattering sparks that formed new patterns of hope. The whale thundered deep, anchoring Poseidon's heart in balance. At last, the circle of flame shrank, pulling into his chest. It settled within him, not as power, but as trust. Poseidon bowed his head, his trident glowing with quiet harmony. The ember's voice softened, no longer commanding, but guiding. You have chosen service, not dominion. The path opens further. The flame dimmed, but its warmth remained within them all. The chamber stilled, no longer a trial, but a sanctuary of fire. Poseidon lifted his gaze, his eyes clear, his heart steady. He turned to his companions, speaking with solemn resolve. We carry the flame not for ourselves, but for the sea. The dolphins whistled, sharp and bright, echoing his vow. The turtles bowed, their shells gleaming with new light. The seahorses glowed, weaving sparks into protective rings once more. The whale rumbled deep, sealing the chamber with sacred song. Together they swam from the molten hall, flame resting in silence. The path before them remained hidden, but their purpose was clear. Balance was not yet restored, but the crown's call was near. And so they moved onward, carrying flame and faith into shadow. The sea darkened as Poseidon and his companions left the chamber of flame. The waters grew colder, and the silence pressed heavy on every side. The dolphins swam close, their song subdued, guiding the way through shadow. The turtles drifted behind, their steady presence anchoring the group. The seahorses glimmered faintly, small sparks weaving paths of fragile light. The whale's song was low, almost a whisper, echoing through the deep. Poseidon gripped his trident tighter, sensing change stirring in the currents. The flame within him pulsed softly, a reminder of its fragile trust. Yet the ocean did not welcome them. It seemed restless, waiting tense. Far ahead, a glow flickered, shifting between light and darkness. It was not the warmth of fire, but the shimmer of illusions. The dolphins clicked uneasily, their movements sharp and defensive. The turtles slowed, as if warning Poseidon to tread carefully. The seahorses gathered close, their lights dimming against unseen eyes. The whale's deep note rolled forth, warning the shadows to reveal themselves. From the gloom emerged forms, shimmering like broken glass in the tide. They were reflections, shifting shapes of Poseidon and his companions. Each reflection mirrored them, but twisted, drained of balance and grace. The dolphins' doubles sang, but their voices were shrill, laced with discord. The turtles' reflections glowed, but their shells cracked with false light. The seahorses sparked, but their fire burned wild, untamed, and hollow. The whale's twin loomed vast, yet empty, its song a lifeless echo. And at the center, Poseidon's own reflection stepped forth with pride. Its trident glowed brighter, its eyes sharp with hunger and claim. It spoke not with words, but with weight, a force pressing deep. You carry the flame, but it is mine, for I am you. Poseidon held still, steadying his breath, resisting the pull of illusion. The whispers of the flame stirred, urging humility, urging patience. The dolphins sang in harmony, cutting against the discordant echoes. The turtles pressed forward, standing between truth and false reflection. The seahorses lit a circle, weaving sparks like a shield of stars. The whale's note thundered, shattering the silence, breaking the false tide. Yet the illusions did not fade, only grew sharper, hungrier, closer. Poseidon raised his trident, not to strike, but to anchor himself. He spoke with calm, his voice firm, carrying through the shadow. You are not me. You are pride without purpose, strength without balance. The reflection wavered, its trident dimming, its form twisting in resistance. But the other illusions pressed harder, their shadows clawing at light. The dolphins darted, weaving lines of silver that tangled the false. The turtles pushed forward, their shells glowing, breaking cracks in illusion. The seahorses spiraled upward, scattering sparks that cut through lies. The whale roared, its song shaking the sea, clearing the heavy dark. Poseidon's flame pulsed brighter, feeding light into his companion's courage. He stepped forward, his reflection collapsing under truth's weight. It dissolved into sparks, fading into the tide without resistance. The others followed, shattering like glass against harmony's force. Silence returned, but it was lighter now, no longer pressing. The dolphins sang freely, their voices joyful once more. The turtles drifted calm, their shells warm with steady light. The seahorses shone bright, weaving playful sparks into flowing patterns. The whale rumbled deep, a note of triumph and relief. Poseidon lowered his trident, his gaze soft, his heart steadied. He had faced not monsters, but himself, the shadow of pride. The flame within him pulsed warmly, approving his choice of truth. The path ahead revealed itself, glowing faintly through the sea's depth. Poseidon turned to his companions, his voice calm and certain. We move forward together, for illusions have no hold on us. The dolphins leapt ahead, eager, scattering light through the water. The turtles followed steady, the seahorses dancing at their side. The whale swam last, its song carrying the vow of unity. And Poseidon pressed on, flame steady, guiding them into the unknown. The ocean floor stretched wide, endless and hushed, as Poseidon and his companions swam deeper. The water shimmered faintly, glowing with strange lights born of unseen forces. The dolphins darted ahead, curious yet cautious, their songs echoing in waves. The turtles moved steady, their shells glinting like anchors of calm. The seahorses glowed brighter, weaving silver sparks across the path ahead. The whale's low song carried through the vastness, steady and protective. Poseidon felt the weight of the flame inside him, pulsing like a heartbeat. Its warmth guided him, but it also reminded him of the burden. Far ahead, a shadowy structure rose, immense and ancient beyond measure. It was a temple, carved of coral and stone, crowned with glowing kelp. Its spires twisted upward, reaching like fingers to the unseen surface. The dolphins slowed, their bodies tense, voices low with warning. The turtles drifted closer, as if to guard the god of seas. The seahorses flared, sparks dancing nervously across the temple gates. The whale rumbled deep, a sound both awe and caution combined. Poseidon raised his trident, its glow answering the call of the place. The gates of the temple stirred, opening with a groan of ancient tides. From within, light poured forth, neither fire nor water, but both entwined. It drew them closer, beckoning them to step into its heart. Poseidon's chest tightened, for he knew the flame's path led here. The companions followed, each step heavy with the weight of destiny. Inside the temple, vast halls stretched beyond sight, lit by floating orbs. They drifted like stars, shifting in patterns of endless constellations. The dolphins twirled among them, their songs harmonizing with the light. The turtles moved slow, unshaken, their shells glowing brighter in response. The seahorses wove between the lights, sparks trailing like shooting stars. The whale sang low, his voice joining the rhythm of the halls. At the center lay a pool, still and deep, glowing from within. Above it hovered an image, half flame, half crown, alive with power. Poseidon stepped closer, the whispers stirring once more around him. This is the seat of balance, the heart of flame and tide. The dolphins hushed, their fins brushing the surface of the glowing pool. The turtles bowed their heads, reverence glowing on their ancient shells. The seahorses circled, sparks dancing like prayers in the dim light. The whale stilled, his silence carrying the weight of eternal patience. Poseidon felt the pool's call, strong, insistent, pulling at his soul. It demanded not strength, but surrender, not rule, but devotion. He knelt, lowering his trident, letting the glow wash over him. The whispers sharpened, voices of flame and water, twined in one song. Will you carry both, without bending either to your will? Poseidon closed his eyes, his heart steady, his breath slow. I will not rule flame or tide. I will walk in service. The pool flared bright, waves of fire and water spiraling upward. The dolphins leapt, their songs rising, echoing like hymns of joy. The turtles glowed, their shells alight with molten veins of light. The seahorses blazed, sparks weaving into crowns of fleeting fire. The whale roared, his deep note shaking the temple's coral bones. The image above the pool split, flame folding into crown, crown into flame. It spun in perfect unity, then drifted downward, slow, deliberate, radiant. It hovered before Poseidon, waiting, asking, offering its eternal trust. The god reached, but not with pride, only with humble hands. The crown touched him, not resting on his brow, but within his heart. Fire and tide surged through him, but neither burned nor drowned. They merged, balanced, flowing together in silence and power. The companions bowed, their bodies glowing with the same eternal flame. The temple stilled, its lights dimming into quiet harmony. Poseidon opened his eyes, calm, the burden no longer heavy. The crown flame was no longer lost, nor broken, but found again. He rose, trident shining, companions gathered close in unity. The whispers faded into stillness, leaving only the sound of ocean. The dolphins sang bright, the turtles hummed low, the seahorses glimmered, the whale roared. Together, they stood in the heart of balance, guardians of the flame. And Poseidon knew the journey was not ended, but truly begun. The sea lay calm, a silence spreading after the temple's final glow dimmed away. Poseidon stood tall, the trident steady, his heart pulsing with the crown flame. The dolphins leapt high, their songs bright, echoing as hymns of renewal. The turtles drifted slow, their shells shimmering with light like sacred relics. The seahorses blazed faintly, sparks weaving into spirals of hope and harmony. The whale released a deep note, vast and resonant, sealing their vow in sound. The flame was no longer hidden nor lost. It lived within them all. It was not a weapon, nor a prize, but a truth to be carried. Poseidon felt its warmth flow through sea and sky, balancing the two worlds. The waters brightened, life awakening, coral glowing as though kissed by dawn. Schools of fish shimmered, weaving patterns like starlight through the wave. The dolphins sang louder, their voices calling life back into forgotten places. The turtles glided with calm, their ancient patience guiding steady tides. The seahorses scattered sparks, leaving trails of silver among coral gardens. The whale's deep song carried far, reaching coasts, rivers, and distant oceans. The world stirred, answering the flame, finding balance in its call. Poseidon closed his eyes, listening to the harmony settle once more. He thought of storms past, of pride, of silence, of endless struggle. Now the silence was different, no longer empty, but full of peace. The whispers of the flame spoke softer, not commands, but gentle guidance. You are not ruler of flame or tide. You are guardian of both. Poseidon bowed his head, accepting the truth as waves swelled gently. The dolphins circled him, their songs weaving threads of laughter and light. The turtles pressed close, steady as stone, sharing in quiet strength. The seahorses glimmered, playful, carrying sparks that danced like living fire. The whale rumbled one final low note, ancient and unshakable. Poseidon looked toward the horizon, where light and sea touched as one. The journey had tested them with illusions, trials, and the weight of pride. Yet none of it had been conquest. It was service, patience, surrender. The flame would not belong to him, for it belonged to all. It was trust between sea and fire, between silence and voice. The dolphins swam ahead, scattering light across the open water. The turtles followed steady, their shells glowing with steady warmth. The seahorses drifted gracefully, leaving sparks like falling stars. The whale swam last, his vast body casting shadows of strength. Together, they formed a circle, guardians bound by vow and flame. Poseidon lifted his trident, but not as a symbol of dominion. It glowed softly, a lantern in the deep, a beacon of balance. The sea itself seemed to breathe easier, its pulse in rhythm with the flame. Corals swayed, fish darted, kelp danced, waves shimmered above like glass. All life moved as one, each part singing in harmony unseen. Poseidon's voice carried gently, spoken not as command, but as promise. The flame is not mine, nor yours, but ours to protect together. The dolphins answered with joyous cries, the turtles with steady calm. The seahorses spiraled brighter, the whale thundered with finality. And the ocean carried their vow across the world, from shore to shore. The crown flame was no longer sunken, no longer lost in silence. It lived in song, in current, in coral, in every drop of tide. It would endure as long as guardians remained faithful, humble, united. Poseidon turned once more, his gaze clear, his heart unburdened. The temple faded behind them, its duty fulfilled, its silence at peace. The path ahead was endless, but the sea was wide and ready. And the god of tides swam onward, crowned not in pride but in flame. Thus ended the journey of fire and sea, yet balance was eternal. The ocean whispered, calm and vast, as guardians swam into forever,